The Unsparkling Star, a short fiction. Some of the elders regarded it as a base matter, and in former times their voices would have been heard louder. But no one could refute the importance of the testimony given by Novatorus. You will recall that only a few moons earlier there were the most remarkable reports about Carius. He was on a diplomatic mission to the cities in the south, and some say there was subterfuge. But members of his own mission swore that one morning, very bright, the fierce, white, unsparkling star of the east had risen high, and it was as though a pathway opened, and in full view, Carius ascended and then was swallowed by the clouds. He was in his armoured vest. He carried his sword. I was there in the council. In the first session, there were cries of grief and talk of assassination. One of our leaders, our lawgivers, had been killed on the highway, we were saying. It was a plain outrage against our diplomats. It was a violation even the gods will not overlook. But, as I say, there were witnesses. The mission reached the southern cities. The reports were accepted there, but those are cities always ready for strange tales. It comes into their ports with trade. In the second session, even as there was talk of reprisals, Novatorus had arrived back from his own journeying, and he bustled into the council and spoke to the wardens and requested time to speak. I was sitting with Theodorum, the younger Theodorum, and he had his eyes on the old fellows. "Look out," he said, nudging me. "This will be interesting." He was of the view that, most likely, Carius had tumbled into a ravine and the mission had gone on regardless with their own justification. I had no settled opinion except that my father had known Carius well, and so, like everyone, I held him to be a man of virtue. Novatorus had this to say. He was travelling along a road, and it was getting towards evening. The great white, unsparkling star of the west had risen, and was glaring in the pink drifts of the approaching sunset. Then, he said, it was as if there was a pathway, and Carius himself emerged from a bank of clouds and stood before him. Novatorus gave him the usual greeting, but Carius instead drew his sword and held it up to the sky, and then spoke, saying, "I, Carius, have a destiny among the gods, because our city has been chosen, and our city will become a jewel under heaven, feared by enemies, beloved of friends." "I tell you," said Novatorus. His hand was on his heart. It was Carius. He carried the sword of Carius, and it was the voice of Carius. Only the head of the council asked the obvious question, why did nothing presage this? Novatorus was brazen enough to suggest that perhaps the priests had misunderstood the omens. When he concluded with this, there was great fist-thumping on the tables. The merchants, who looked south, and even some of the landholders were persuaded we live in extraordinary times. As we filed out, I was with Theodorum. "It seems," he said, almost with a smile, "that dead men can now become gods."